One of the strangest things about my research is the use of a phenomenon that involves a pendulum. Now, right off the bat, you might be thinking, oh, this is going to be a hoax, a joke. But what we found out about 30 years ago, a researcher in orthomolecular medicine showed my wife and I that if we were concerned about allergies, that we could take an object, or at least some people could take an object, and we tried this and it worked for us, that if we hang it over something we wanted to test, and if our bodies wanted it, an involuntary twitching of the hand would cause the pendulum to swing one way, and if our bodies didn't want it, the involuntary twitching of the hand would cause it to go another way. And we found that this worked, and we could actually detect objects that we were allergic to. And I researched what was happening here, and I found that there's an energy field that goes 6 inches out from the hands and 3 inches out from the toes of the spine, and an inch over the rest of the body. And the body will electrically detect the ions within that field, and the reaction will occur. If the body wants what it is detecting, it will swing clockwise. Now, again, I'm reminding you that this is not the pendulum swinging. It's the involuntary twitching of the hand that is causing it to move. The pendulum does not move by itself. And then we discovered, after 20 years of using it over actually testing elements to see whether we're high and low in them, we discovered by taking ormus that we got what is similar to, I would describe as a placebo effect, where the electrical signals work normal, but after taking the ormus for a while, I could think of an element, and my body would react as if it was high in that element. So what this allowed for was, here's an aluminum can, and I could think of the element aluminum, and if I hold it over the aluminum, it goes counterclockwise. My fingers will twitch counterclockwise because my body is assuming that I am high in aluminum, and it doesn't want the aluminum in the can, and the electrical response, the twitch, indicates to me that this is aluminum. And by using this method, we could then expand our testing to 118 elements off the periodic table, which was very convenient and very enlightening. But one of the things that I found was that I could also pick up certain energy fields that were not in the scientific literature. So I have tracked down about 12 different energy fields. And some people will say, well, I don't believe any of these things exist if you're just swinging a pendulum around. Well, I don't really care if anybody believes or doesn't believe what I'm finding about these energy fields. My only thing is that while I have the ability to use this, if I can detect these fields, I want to find out what properties they have so I can at least register or log what I have found about these fields. Now, it's interesting to note that it's actually the shape of this works quite well for me. My wife uses a bobber on a string. I use this top because I find that the wider base causes the signal somehow flows over it and causes my twitching to be more pronounced. It's also interesting, there's a lot of things we cannot detect with this. I cannot detect radio signals, I cannot detect gravity, I cannot detect EMF, I cannot detect AC current, I can detect DC current, but not AC current. I cannot detect anything that is frozen because it's ions, and the ions don't travel well through frozen things. I cannot detect what this pop is made of. If I hold it over here and say iron, I don't get anything. If I say calcium, I don't get anything. I cannot detect what is inside that can. I can detect through glass or plastic, but I cannot detect through metal. So now I have to go back to the research of Viktor Grebennikov and his cavernous structure effect. I found that if I place the lids like this with one lid space in between it, I get a negative ion charge over these lids, which was really fascinating. And then I discovered that if I took Junebug electron, that would be the the shell that protects the wings, and I lined them up with this type of spacing and with all the tips pointed in the same direction. And if one tip was in the wrong direction, the whole thing, the energy field would not work. But I got an ion charge over it, and I found out that it was related to the points of the compass. That the ion fields would grow until you got to north, and it would drop, and it would change as you went west, and it would drop on east and west, and it would drop on north and south, the ion fields. So there was actually a compass effect with this. And then I thought, well, I wonder if this is related to the compound eye of a bug. And so what I did is I took lids like this and I put them all tight together, but I could not get a ion reading over it until I filled the lids with water, just like a compound eye is filled with a gel or a water. Then I got the effect. I got the ion charge over it. But the ion charge did not designate like this did according to the compass until I added something to replicate the body of the bug. I took a paper towel and put it off the back of it here to give it a different composition change, and that gave me the effect. So that the compound eye of a bug actually works like a rudimentary compass and altimeter or attitude gauge on a bug. And that's probably why you see those little antennas sticking up through the compound eye to detect the ion fields that are above it. But that was really fascinating. But then I wondered how in the world the energy field knows which is the tip and which is the back of the electron. If I have one pointed in the wrong direction, the thing does not work. The energy field shuts off. Why in the world? How does it know? Because some of the electrons look identical. I mean, you look at that one, it looks almost identical, front and back. How does it know? So I went and took an electron and did an ion test over it, and I detected strong titanium at this end and iron at this end, and I detected nothing in between. And this was wrong. This couldn't be. The titanium is not that strong in an animal that I know of. And the iron was way too strong. And how come I couldn't detect all the compounds, all the carbon and the calcium and the iron and everything that's in between here that composes all that brown shell? I couldn't detect it. Just strong titanium here and strong iron there. So in the back of my mind, I had to register that somehow the cup, shaped as a bowl or shaped like a boat, interferes with the ion reading and accentuates the titanium and the iron readings and blocks the reading of what is in the center. But if I flip this thing over, which I won't, it's kind of hard to do. Anyhow, if I flip it over, so I'm reading the back of it, then I get the full spectrum of energy or of ions that are in it, and the titanium reading is minor over here and the iron reading is minor over there. It's within what I would expect of a normal range, and I picked up the calcium and the carbon and everything else that's in between. So somehow when it's rolled over I can get the full spectrum, but when it's cupped up like a boat I can only get the titanium or the iron on it. So the compositional change was a critical discovery. So what I had done is I took two electrons from the June bugs and I glued them to a stick. And if I had them up like a June bug would lift them up, I noticed that there was a negative ion charge that would form over it. But the June bugs were, the electrons were so fragile and so tiny, I thought, well, I'm going to make a replica. So I made a replica of June bug electron being lifted up, and I could test the actual June bugs, and I got a negative ion reading over it. And for me, my body tends to stay neutral. So if I'm over a negative ion field, it tends to say no because I've got enough ions for what I want. And I tested over here, and I got a negative reading. I thought, well, okay, well, we've got a negative ion field over this product also. But then one day I was drinking a real strong cup of coffee, and I had switched to using these because they're more durable than the June bugs. And I tested it, and I got that negative reading. And I thought, okay, well, there's a negative ion field on it, which I was expecting. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. I just drank a very stiff cup of coffee. And the coffee tends to make my body somewhat acidic into the positive range, which for my ion readings, if my body is in the positive range, and it will want to balance it out with more negative ions, which with a pendulum, I should not be getting this reading. I should be getting either a neutral reading, which is back and forth, or a positive reading, which means I have had too much coffee and I need some negative ions. I want these negative ions. But this was going this way. And I thought, well, this is wrong. There's something wrong here. And I went and double checked it by charging my body with positive ion charge electrically off of a battery, and it still got negative. So it was not an ion charge. I was picking up something that was not ions. But what was it?